This is WAB's Week in Review, the show where we look back the last few days of stories from your WAB News team. I'm Alex Hummick, managing editor of WAB News, and we start with today a federal judge denying bond this week to a man who allegedly planned a mass shooting at Atlanta's airport. Billy Joe Cagle was arrested at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport last week after his concerned family contacted authorities. Police say they found an assault rifle and ammunition in his parked truck. Federal prosecutors have charged the 49-year-old from Cartersville with attempted violence at an international airport, making interstate threats, and possessing a firearm as a felon. Well, switching gears now, two federal judges ruled nearly simultaneously on Friday that President Donald Trump's administration must continue to pay for SNAP, the nation's biggest food aid program, using emergency reserve funds during the government shutdown. But before that last-minute ruling, federal food assistance would have lapsed for some 1.4 million Georgians, and that would have started this month. Earlier this week, WAB's Julian Virgin told us how the city of Atlanta and its partners were preparing to help those who would have been struggling.
Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens announced the launch of ATL Cares to help residents facing food insecurity and financial strain during the federal shutdown. This includes issuing an administrative order directing
the Commissioner of the Department of Watershed Management will refrain from terminating the water services of any residential watershed management customer due to non-payment from today through January 31st, 2026.
Dickens also called upon multiple agencies to issue temporary moratoriums on residential evictions and housing the city owns and sponsors until January 2026.
These measures ensure that Atlanta's most vulnerable residents have a safety net no matter what happens at the federal level.
Meanwhile, Dickens says over 500,000 Metro Atlanta residents will lose SNAP benefits this Saturday. Kyle Wade is the CEO of the Atlanta Community Food Bank.
The number of people accessing food assistance from our network grow by 70% over the last 3.5 years.
Wade says the food bank will draw $5 million from its reserves to purchase over 6 million pounds of emergency food to distribute over the next 4 weeks. Julian Virgin, WABE News.
And food pantries in Georgia were bracing for increased need as federal food assistance recipients were set to lose their monthly benefits. WABE's Dormaya Vance had more.
The USDA announced earlier this month that funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program will run out this weekend.
We're worried about if we're going to have enough food to continue to keep feeding them.
Corey Kimber is with the local nonprofit Hosea Helps.
They're arriving here at 7 and 6 o'clock in the morning just to sit outside the gate and wait for someone to come to get the food.
The hunger relief group Feeding for America reports about 15% of Georgians face food insecurity. So far this year, Fulton County alone has processed over 80,000 SNAP applications. Baylor University professor Craig Gunderson says this lapse in benefits will make the problem worse.
These families were expecting to get these SNAP benefits. They've been planning for that, then all of a sudden it's taken away. You're going to see this will lead to an increase in food insecurity due to this.
That especially impacts vulnerable populations like kids and folks with disabilities or mental health issues, even more so if they're people of color. That's according to Dom Kelly with the nonprofit New Disabled South.
Disabled people in this country, and particularly here in the South, are twice as likely to experience poverty and food insecurity compared to non-disabled people. So we are talking about people who are directly impacted in disproportionate ways, who need food assistance.
For now, SNAP recipients can still use remaining funds on their cards, but they will not renew in November. Dormaya Vance, WABE News.
Some Georgia Head Start centers are at risk of closing at the end of the week as the government shutdown continues. WAB's Mei Shu has more on the early learning and development centers.
If the government shutdown continues, it could mean the loss of funds for 5 organizations in Georgia that typically receive federal money on November 1st. Head Start provides free early childhood education, meals, health screenings, and wraparound services to low-income children and their families. The Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta is providing the YMCA of Metro Atlanta, Sheltering Arms, and Easter Seals North Georgia with a 45-day bridge loan totaling $8 million. This loan is meant to keep those programs operational for the 5,800 children that they serve. That still leaves several hundred children who may see centers close by the end of the week. Blythe Robinson, the president and CEO of Sheltering Arms, said the loan is crucial.
But it is extraordinary, and it is not something that we can expect to continue. We really need for our federal government to reopen so that we can continue serving our children and our families.
Elizabeth Morris has 2 kids in the Easter Seals Head Start program. She says it's been a saving grace for her and her husband, who serves in the Army and was recently furloughed.
Some kids, that's their lifeline. You know, what are we going to eat for the weekend? Because families can't afford to buy food or to put food on their table.
Morris says she also works with kids at Easter Seals. If the loan runs out, she'll be out of a job. Mei Shu, WABE News.
And expanding on this, a Head Start provider in rural Georgia is closing 15 early childhood education facilities Monday due to the government shutdown. Action Pact provides Head Start in 12 rural counties in Georgia. The closures of those programs will impact more than 500 children and cause 187 employees to be furloughed. Meanwhile, Governor Brian Kemp is pointing the finger at Democrats after they called on him to backfill funding for programs affected by the federal government shutdown. WABE's Raul Bali spoke with Kemp as he was wrapping up his trip in Asia earlier this week.
When asked whether the state considered backfilling funding for food aid through SNAP or Head Start programs, Kemp said the solution is for Georgia's Democratic U.S. senators to vote to reopen the federal government.
It's not just WIC or SNAP or early learning programs. You got TSA, you got the military, you got all these other federal things. Like, where does it end? The state's not in the business of bailing the federal government out.
Democrats in Washington have linked the prolonged shutdown to their effort to extend enhanced affordable care tax credits that help lower out-of-pocket health care premiums, including for 1.5 million Georgians. Meanwhile, state Democrats have asked the governor to tap the state's billions of budget reserves to continue SNAP benefits for 1.4 million Georgians.
We cannot fund all the government programs that are out there with Georgia taxpayers' money. That is unsustainable. We don't know if we would get reimbursed for those programs. And for the Democrats to sit there and try to blame, me or any other Republican for this is just wrong.
Some states have stepped in with direct funding to backfill SNAP or additional funding for food banks. Raul Bali, WABE News.
Rare off-year elections for 2 seats on the Georgia Public Service Commission are making Republicans in Georgia nervous. They're the only statewide races on the ballot next week, and as WABE's Emily Jones reported, more Democrats are expected to turn out to vote around the state because cities like Atlanta are electing a mayor and city council members.
Some of Georgia's top Republicans gathered in a barn-style wedding venue in Forsyth County recently for a show of party unity and patriotism.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Bubba McDonald led them in song. He's a longtime member of the Public Service Commission, which regulates the state's largest electric utility, Georgia Power. Everyone on the commission is a Republican right now, and State Party Chair Josh McCoon told the crowd to keep it that way.
We are all united in one goal, and that is to send the message that Georgia is closed to the Democratic Party.
Next year, Georgia Republicans are hoping to maintain control of the governor's office, state legislature, and other key posts, and unseat Democrat Jon Ossoff in the U.S. Senate. But first, they're focused on the only statewide races on this year's ballot for seats that usually go largely ignored, the Public Service Commission.
You hear everybody talk about how important it is that our state continues to be the #1 state to do business, raise a family, have a job. The backbone of that is reliable energy.
Georgia hasn't voted for this commission in 5 years because a lawsuit disrupted the election schedule. Then, in June, only 2% of Georgia voters turned out for the party primaries. About twice as many Democrats showed up as Republicans. So now, the Republicans are spending time and money from the governor on down to get their voters to the polls. Republican State Representative Todd Jones says that's key because many counties like Forsyth, which he represents, don't have local elections this year, unlike some of the state's Democratic strongholds.
The fact is we have over 100,000 voters who sit not attached to a city, which means they don't have a mayor's race, a city council race, you name it, to get them out. It's our job to get them out.
Rally attendee Ron Ray got the message. This commission is important. It has final say over power bills, which it raised 6 times in the last 3 years, but froze this year.
I wasn't aware of how big a deal it was, honestly, until tonight.
He learned about the rally in his county from a Republican email list he's on. He says the PSC wasn't on his radar before, but now he'll go vote because he's worried Democratic policies would be expensive. For their part, the Georgia Democrats see a chance for a rare statewide win that could bode well for next year. So State Chair Charlie Bailey says they're investing in this race in a way they haven't before.
The state party's never spent any money on a PSC race. Period.
He says they're running phone banks, sending out thousands of mailers and knocking on doors. And the Democratic National Committee is getting involved too, fundraising and deploying a top official to campaign in Georgia. This battle over voter turnout is testing the strength of the Republican Party that has run Georgia for the last few decades and giving Democrats a rare shot at statewide victory. But even if the Democrats pull out a win, Georgia State University political scientist Tammy Greer says it might just be a blip.
We'll get to the end and then someone will do a real quick analysis and say, it was because of, a Democratic wave or whatever that looks like, rather than, it just so happened because of the way that the calendar fell.
For Democratic Chair Bailey, the fight over these obscure seats is a sign Georgia is still in battleground territory. The state narrowly voted for Biden in 2020 and for President Trump last year by 50.7%.
A close election is yet another piece of evidence that this is a battleground. A battleground, by its very definition, can be won and it can be lost.
And both parties have decided they're out to win this year and next. Emily Jones, WABE News, Forsyth County.
This story is part of a partnership with Grist. You're listening to WAB's Week in Review with me, Alex Helmick. Well, immigration can be an isolating experience, but one Atlanta-based artist is using video games to translate the emotions. As WAB's Emily Wu Pearson told us, the artist creates immersive worlds so that others can understand.
Sarglana Cherapanova sifts through lines of code to find the final version of one of the games she's developed.
I have multiple projects that sometimes they are overlapping.
It's a game about the existential dread she's experienced as an Indigenous person far from home.
So this is the playground. It's a version of a playground from my home.
She's from Yakutsk, the capital of the Sakha Republic in northeastern Russia, and one of the coldest cities on Earth. But Cherapanova is in warm Atlanta. She researches colonialism in video games at Georgia Tech and uses the medium to communicate the feelings of isolation that come with being Indigenous and an immigrant.
When I was designing it, I was thinking about how the rules for creating video games, they actually intersect with how the rules in real life work.
Cherapanova clicks through an intro where the player is the only person in the world of her game, called Stars Aren't Visible.
Mechanics are in a way of how we do translate human experience, right?
It starts out in a bedroom with no decor. The player is instructed to go outside, while text on screen explains the game was created during the pandemic lockdown that everyone experienced, but the shared experience was one of isolation. Cherapanova says she wanted to find a metaphor for extreme isolation non-immigrants could understand.
Since coming here, I haven't seen another person from Sakha Republic in 6 years, and when I would try to just mention where I'm from, nobody would usually know where I'm from.
When the player goes back in the bedroom, it becomes that playground from Cherapanova's hometown. The isolation from the pandemic is transformed into the loneliness of living in a memory.
Video games are also a form of expression of human experiences. So mechanics are like the abstracted versions of the values that we have.
Cherapanova says she likes video games as a medium because they can immerse the player into the ways she understands the world, in a way she feels she can communicate best. She completed her newest work through funding from the Creative Catalyst Fellowship from the Asian American Pacific Islander Civic Engagement Fund. Yoon-suk Lee is the director of the fund.
She represents a voice in a community that is often also less known within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. She's also using Medium in ways that are newer, innovative.
This summer, for the first time in 6 years, Chair Panava met others from the Sakha Republic living in the U.S. They met in New York for Ihir, a Sakha festival celebrating the summer solstice.
As a culmination, we would usually meet the sun rising because it would energize us with energy for a new year.
In Chair Panava's newest game, the player celebrates Ihir, joining a ring of brightly lit dancing figures in a circle as the sun rises. The isolation is over. Emily Wu Pearson, WABE News.
And you can find links to the work at wabe.org. That's all for the show this week. My thanks to the WABE News team for all the great work. I'm Alex Helmick. Thank you for supporting WABE and for listening to the Week in Review.